Raja, why is it that it takes so long for unemployment to go down?
That's a difficult question to answer, but one of the reasons we talk about is the following, that if a person has been unemployed for a long time, what happens is that he or she loses their skills, and therefore they're less employable. They also become disappointed, disillusioned after having sent 500 applications and got 500 rejections. So after some time, they start giving up looking for work. So that's one thing that happens. On the other side, from the employer's side, what happens is if someone applies to me and he or she has been unemployed, and I interview them and they say, I ask them, what have you been doing? Oh, I've been unemployed for 12 months. The employer thinks, must be something wrong with this guy. That's why he hasn't got a job so far. Because if he was any good, of course he'd have had a job. So both from the employer's side, there's some kind of stigma attached to the long-term unemployed. From the employee's side, the potential unemployed person's side, is that they lose hope, they give up, they get fed up, they also fall ill. And I think Claire mentioned the fact that a lot of people who are long-term unemployed often have various kinds of disabilities. There might be mental disabilities, depression of some sort, physical disabilities, and so on. So that's the other thing. And from what happens in a recession is jobs get, after about 12 months, people start losing their jobs. Not immediately, it takes about 12 months after recession that the jobs go. When the economy picks up, employers are a little cagey, they're a bit wary. They say, well, if I hire someone now and we get through another recession, I'll lose my job, my sales, I'll have to sack these people again. So I'm going to wait for a bit to see if it's worth hiring new people. So for all these kind of reasons, it's very difficult to get out of a recession. So the best way of avoiding a problem is not to have long-term unemployment. And I think that's why the issue of long-term unemployment is very serious. We should try and tackle it before people become long-term unemployed. And unfortunately, the government in its last budget has made no attempt to tackle this problem. Under the previous Keating government, we went through a thing called Working Nation, which my colleague Bruce Chapman and I were involved in talking about those kind of issues. But this government, for some reason, has forgotten about the unemployed. And they've forgotten about the unemployed in terms of the stimulus packages, the benefits, this so-called cash splash, which they got excluded from. And they're still being treated as if, they're not really serious about looking for work. I know they won't say that, of course, but it looks as if they're treated as if they're really layabouts, the dole bludgers.
Hi, my name is Laura. This question is for Claire. If I understood you correctly, you said that the stimulus package was a positive thing, but you also said that 80% of people saved the money they received. Can you explain that intention, if it was designed to be spent?
Well, the original intention of the stimulus that came down last October was an injection into the economy. And, if you listen to the Prime Minister, as I said, he said, don't save this, spend it. Want it in the economy supporting jobs. But it was interesting that when the assessment was done by Access Economics, that 80% of that initial stimulus package by about January was still being saved. Now, the view is that is now slowly being spent into the economy. But the first thoughts were that because it was targeting low-income Australians who probably, could very quickly use that money, that it would go quickly, but it didn't. And certainly I think the assessment seems to be that it is now being spent slowly into the economy. And, for example, I think the March quarter in the retail sector there was a small amount of growth, if my memory serves me right. So some of that funds are now starting to, be slowly spent. And that then goes together with the second stimulus package that very wisely went to young people this time. And young people, I suspect, not having much kind of backup in the bank, would have spent that. I have two children who are university students, and they managed to spend that quite nicely. And now tell me that if Kevin Rudd sends them $900 every quarter, he's got their vote forever. I don't know how you feel about it. But when it went to young people in the second economic stimulus package, it still did not go to the unemployed. And yet the unemployed, when you look at the figures of what an unemployed person gets, is the lowest payment in Australia. So they're doing it tough and they didn't get any of that to kind of just help them a bit.
Professor, given your research into the demographics and the geographics of employment in Western Sydney, have you done any research, or what's your opinion on green-collar jobs in Western Sydney?
Well, I think that comes nicely around to what I said at the end about the food security. Because a lot of the, as an example there, one of the overseas pushes towards local food, it's all about retaining agricultural lands, etc., etc. But you've got to have people to work in the agricultural sector. You've got to have farmers who know they're going to get a steady income. One of the problems in some of the areas where food is growing quite nicely, and somebody, a restaurateur in Alice Springs, told me this just a month ago, he's not convinced that he's going to be able to pass that knowledge and that occupation, that organic vegetable growing, onto his kids. And I can understand that. They don't want to go on in this industry. They want to go down to town, they want to go and do a degree, and why shouldn't they? So one of the problems is it's all very well to talk about those green jobs like organic agriculture, and I've no doubt they make a fantastic impact on food security in places like Sydney, let alone Alice Springs. But there's got to be somebody doing it. So I think there are all sorts of ways we can do that. We tend to spend a lot of time thinking about, you know, the high-tech jobs and the kinds of training that needs to go in that. We think about industrial parks. But the idea of an agricultural innovation centre in a city like Sydney is actually a good idea, I think. And I think there's a lot of people who would like the skills and the work experience of actually working outdoors and working in the rural sector, and organics is a very innovative kind of sector. So I'm all in favour of it, much more so than I was before I started looking at this whole food security issue. So I think green-collar jobs, right on.